Hey guys, what's up? Brent Calmer from Blue Water VST. Thanks for joining me for another pre-dawn excursion into the world of Reaktor, and specifically, this time, into the world of Lurker. Now, Lurker is a creative delay effect. It uses two independent delays to imprint rhythmic textures onto any sound you feed into it. Not just rhythmic textures, you can also produce comb filter type sounds, phasing sounds, spring reverb type sounds. But at its core, it imprints rhythmic structures and rhythmic textures, I should say, onto any sound you feed into it. Now, what sounds do you feed into it, you ask? Well, that's something interesting about Lurker. You can use the onboard sampler with its accompanying sample map, or your own sample map should you choose, or you can also feed audio into it from an outside source. And that's what these internal and external knobs are about. So when we have it set to internal at 12 o'clock, we are accepting basically half of the level of the sampler, and external is set to 12 o'clock, but we don't have any audio coming into it right now, so we can just turn that down. When we get Lurker going, here's what we hear. We can open the filter on both left and right channels by moving this X in the cutoff field up to the right. Now let's take a look, or let's take a listen to this original sample and get a sense for exactly what Lurker is doing. And this is how the sample sounds in its original habitat. It's kind of a nice resonant pad sound. In Lurker, however, it sounds like this. Now this is all about modulation. You see that we have four separate sequencer lanes, A, B, C, and D. And they each have their own length settings here. Now these are set to 32 steps. D is set to 16 steps. They also have a step size field below the length field. So each of these kind of can operate independently of one another. They can each have their own length and step size. And then these function as modulators. So these can be set to things like delay time down here in depth, things like the interaction between the left and right channel feedback circuits here in swap, and even the cutoff filter, the cutoff of the filter. So a variety of things. Anytime you see these fields, that is indicating to you that there's a modulation source or a modulation that is active that is being done by the lane indicated. Now, in the case of A and B, we're using steps. In the case of C and D, we're using kind of a glide between these different points. So that's why these bend rather than kind of form a horizontal line. So you can use C and D for the more fluid sounds or the more fluid modulations that you want to do. But let's take a look at these units. How do these work? Well, it's a little complex, but it can be explained fairly easily. The static delay time is dialed in using quantization, in which case you're quantizing the delay to particular times or to particular subdivisions, or milliseconds for those short delays or long delays. Any delay that you want to do that is not kind of rhythmically pegged, use milliseconds for. Now, both of these can happen at the same time, and in the case of a modulation, these times are added to whatever modulation is going on. So to the dynamically changing delay time is added both the quantized delay time and the millisecond delay time. So I know that's a little bit in the weeds, but it's a little important to understand for how this works, because when you get this going, you start altering these, you're going to get completely different textures. Now, the depth of the modulation really matters because we're using the lane D to do the modulating right now. If I crank this up, it is going to swing within a much greater range of delay time, and you'll hear that. You can very much hear that. And if I bring it down, it's a much subtler effect. Now here's something that is another complex thing that I want to make sure you get. This field here, this knob actually modulates the amount of delay time modulation. So think about this. The depth, which is the delay time modulation, is being modulated right now by D. Then this modulation itself is being modulated by mod here. So it's a two-level modulation. if that's what you want. And this one's being modulated by C. So in a sense, depth is being modulated by D, or the delay time is being modulated by D, and the delay time modulation is being modulated by C. So I know it's a mystery wrapped in a riddle, but that's how it works. And you don't have to do any of this. You can make this as basic as you want. And you could come in and go to the initialize snapshot and say, come up here to the sample map, make sure you have a sound in here. Let's go back to our OK Computer sound. And then you can start from scratch and start building in these modulations and these settings as you like. And this is what I would recommend, because this allows you to hear exactly what you're doing on the fly. Now, a few more words. These two units can be used either in parallel formation or serially. So if they're used serially, it means one is going into two and then going to the output. If they're used in parallel formation, they're both going to the output. They're both parallel to one another. And that's generally how it's set. But you can also crossfade between these two. So let's dial in something here. Just use a very basic sequence. We'll just use sequence A, and we'll say that we want to modulate the delay time on unit 1. And then we will get this going. We'll bring up this modulation. And then you hear it taking effect. And one thing you notice is it's kind of gliding between those steps. And that's a function of the slur feature here. This allows you to create kind of a legato between steps. Now if you bring this down, you'll get a much choppier sound. There you get that much choppier sound. Now the quantize and millisecond fields pertain to the left and right channels from top to bottom respectively. So you control the delay times on each channel. And already we're getting a fairly complex texture. You could also bring this up if you wanted a longer pattern, a shorter pattern. So in the case of the filter, what you're looking at are the left channel from top to bottom moving vertically and the right channel moving horizontally. So when I'm opening it like this, that means that I'm opening the filter on both channels. And the same goes for resonance. Now this, as with anything else, can be modulated. So I could use modulation lane A to also modulate the filter cutoff. And that gives us some interesting movement. Also have negative modulation available. So just a ton that can be done here. Now, the goal was to just get you kind of understanding how the modulation works. The documentation does a good job of explaining these different things. But again, it's a good idea just to start with the initialized snapshot and start building things up. And use your own sample maps or use your own pad sounds or whatever else as you like. That will help you understand this. This is a good ensemble to use to render loops from. If you like. If you just like a particular sequence that you've generated, it's a good idea to render loops from it. It's also a great ensemble to use with other effects. I like using it with Banana Electrique, the distortion effect that is part of the Reaktor Classics folder. So you can do all sorts of stuff with this, but again, start small and build up, because this is one that can kind of discourage you pretty quickly if you don't take it step at a time. But hopefully this video has helped you to do that. So I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. Get in there with Lurker and see if you can find some rhythmic textures that really work for you. And I'll see you next time.